Daniel, I never left you. Kemi, is that really you?
3 years earlier, life had looked very different. The evening sun hung low over a modest neighborhood on the outskirts of Lagos. Children chased a worn football through dusty streets while women sat outside their homes, chatting as they prepared dinner. The smell of fried plantains drifted through the warm air. Backhand index pointing right. If you're enjoying this emotional African story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support helps bring more powerful stories like this to the channel. Daniel Adeyemi sat beside Kemi on a weathered wooden bench beneath a large mango tree. Neither of them had much. Daniel worked long hours doing odd jobs whenever he could find them. Some weeks were better than others. Some weeks they barely had enough money to get by. But whenever he was with Kemi, the struggle seemed lighter. Kemi rested her head gently against his shoulder. "You've been quiet all day," she said with a soft smile. Daniel stared toward the fading horizon. "I got the call." She lifted her head. "The one from London?" He nodded. For a moment neither spoke. The distant sounds of Lagos filled the silence. Then Kemi reached for his hand. "You should go." Daniel looked at her. "You say that too easily. Because I know why you're doing it." His jaw tightened. "I'm tired of watching you struggle." "Daniel." "No." He squeezed her hand gently. "You deserve more than this. You deserve a proper home. A good life. You deserve everything I haven't been able to give you." Emotion shimmered in Kemi's eyes. "I never asked for riches." "I know. Then why are you talking like this?" Daniel smiled sadly. "Because one day I want to marry you without worrying about tomorrow's meal." A tear slipped down her cheek. He brushed it away with his thumb. "When I come back," he said quietly, "I'll come back ready. Ready to build our future." Kemi laughed softly through her tears. "And if it takes years? I'll still come back. And if I have to wait?" Daniel looked directly into her eyes. "Will you?" Without hesitation she nodded. "I'll wait for you, Daniel. No matter how long it takes." The following morning, she stood among dozens of families at the airport, waving as he disappeared beyond the security gates. Neither knew how much life was about to change. Neither knew how many promises would be tested. And while Daniel spent the next 3 years working tirelessly to build their future, someone much closer was quietly destroying it. After Daniel left for London, the small house Kemi had inherited from her parents felt emptier than ever. The evenings were the hardest. She would sit alone on the narrow veranda, listening to distant generators hum across the neighborhood while staring at the phone in her hands, waiting for Daniel's calls. Sometimes the loneliness felt unbearable. That was why Daniel's family became so important to her. His mother, Mama Grace, often invited her over for Sunday meals. His younger sister, Tola, would sit beside her and gossip about neighbors while helping prepare jollof rice. For a while, Kemi felt as though she had found another family. "You don't have to carry everything alone," Mama Grace would tell her. And Kemi believed her. Months passed. Daniel called whenever he could. Sometimes from crowded train stations. Sometimes from small rooms after exhausting work shifts. Each call ended the same way. "Take care of yourself." "I will. And if you need anything, tell my family." "I promise." Money soon began arriving from London. At first it was only enough to cover bills and repairs around Kemi's aging home. Then the amounts gradually increased. Daniel worked harder. Longer hours. Fewer days off. He wanted their future secured before he returned. One afternoon, Kemi arrived at Mama Grace's house carrying bags of groceries Daniel had paid for. The older woman's eyes widened. "All this?" Kemi smiled. Daniel insisted. From across the room, Tola exchanged a glance with her older brother, Victor. A glance that lasted only a second. But something about it unsettled Kemi. Weeks later, Daniel sent money for Kemi to expand her small tailoring business. New sewing machines arrived. Customers increased. For the first time in years, life seemed to be improving. Yet the atmosphere around Daniel's family began to change. Comments became sharper. Questions became more frequent. "How much did Daniel send this month?" Victor casually asked one evening. "And what gifts is he bringing back?" Tola added. Kemi laughed nervously. I don't really ask. But they kept asking. Again and again. Whenever Daniel called. Whenever money arrived. Whenever good news came from London. The warmth that once surrounded her slowly faded, replaced by smiles that never quite reached their eyes. And before long, a cruel scheme began that would cost her everything she owned. The first sign that something was wrong came on a rainy evening. Kemi sat inside her tailoring shop, watching drops of water race down the dusty window. The shop was small, but it was hers. 2 sewing machines hummed softly as she finished a customer's dress. Her phone suddenly rang. Daniel's voice burst through the speaker. Kemi, did you receive the money? She frowned. What money? The transfer I sent last week. Kemi's smile disappeared. I never got anything. A long silence followed. That's impossible, Daniel said. Victor told me he delivered it. Kemi stared at the floor. He never mentioned it. Daniel sounded confused, but the call ended before either could understand what had happened. That was only the beginning. Over the following months, transfers vanished. Packages never arrived. Letters went missing. Whenever Kemi asked questions, Daniel's family always had an explanation. There must have been a banking problem. The package got lost. You know how these things happen. Yet somehow, the problems never stopped. Meanwhile, whispers began spreading through the neighborhood. At the market, conversations suddenly ended when Kemi approached. Neighbors who once greeted her warmly now avoided eye contact. One afternoon, she overheard 2 women speaking near a fruit stall. That's her. The one taking money from men overseas? I heard she's using Daniel. Kemi froze. The basket slipped slightly from her hands. What did you say? The women quickly walked away. But the damage was done. The rumor spread faster than Harmattan fire. Customers stopped coming to her shop. Orders were canceled. People who once praised her work suddenly found excuses to stay away. Week after week, her income disappeared. Soon she could no longer pay the rent on the shop. The landlord handed her a notice. I'm sorry, Kemi. Business is business. She packed her sewing machines with trembling hands. Years of work vanished in a single afternoon. Things became even worse at home. Her savings were gone. Bills piled up. Friends stopped visiting. Even people who knew her character began believing the stories. Everywhere she went, she felt eyes following her, judging her, condemning her. Then, just when she thought things could not get worse, a devastating betrayal left her completely homeless. It happened slowly, almost invisibly, like poison spreading through clean water. In London, Daniel worked harder than ever, believing every sacrifice was building the life he and Kemi had dreamed of. But back home in Lagos, his family was building a very different story. One evening, Victor called him. His voice sounded heavy, concerned. Daniel, there's something you need to know. Daniel leaned against the cold wall of his small apartment. What is it? A pause. Kemi, she has changed. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? She is seeing someone else. The words hit like a punch. Daniel straightened immediately. That's not possible. Victor sighed deeply, as if carrying a painful truth. I wish it wasn't. People have seen her with another man. She stopped asking about you. She doesn't even talk about the wedding anymore. Daniel's grip tightened around the phone. You're lying. But doubt had already slipped in. Days later, more calls came. More voices. His mother, Tola, even neighbors from back home, all saying the same thing in different ways. She moved on. She forgot you. She is using your money for another man. Each sentence chipped away at him. Meanwhile, in Lagos, a different plan was unfolding. Mama Grace smiled warmly at a wealthy businessman seated in their living room. His daughter, Adora, sat elegantly beside him, dressed in gold silk, her presence calm and assured. She is a good girl, Mama Grace said softly. And Daniel is a good son. Together, they will be perfect. The businessman nodded, impressed. A marriage between our families will be beneficial. Victor quickly added, Daniel deserves someone who truly values him. No one mentioned Kemi's name without bitterness now. No one spoke of the years she had waited. Letters were hidden. Messages were deleted. And when Daniel finally came home for what he believed was a broken relationship, and a new beginning arranged by his family, he did not question it. Because betrayal had been dressed as truth. The wedding preparations moved quickly. Luxury halls were booked. Guests invited. Gold decorations ordered. Adora smiled at every fitting, while Daniel moved through it all like a man walking through someone else's life. Yet somewhere beyond the polished halls and celebration music, fate was already moving quietly through the streets of Lagos. Because the wedding day arrived, but fate has one final surprise waiting in the streets. The noise of Balagan Market swallowed everything. Horns, shouting traders, the endless shuffle of feet across hot asphalt. But Daniel heard nothing. Only Kemi's voice. She sat on the edge of the pavement, hands trembling as she clutched a torn scarf around her shoulders. Her eyes avoided his at first, as if ashamed of a life she never chose. "I didn't leave you, Daniel," she whispered. His throat tightened. "Then what happened to you?" A bitter laugh escaped her lips, broken and tired. "Your family happened." Daniel stepped closer, shaking his head slowly. "No, that's not possible." Kemi looked up then, eyes shining with pain. "They took everything. Your money. Your messages. Even the letters you wrote." He froze. "What are you saying?" She swallowed hard. "Victor told me you had stopped sending money. Mama Grace said you were getting married there. To someone rich. They said you forgot me." Daniel's breath hitched. "That's a lie." From behind them, an old vendor at the stall hesitated before speaking. "She's telling the truth, Oga." Another man nodded. "I saw Victor collecting packages meant for her, always saying it was from London Customs." Daniel turned sharply. "What?" The vendor stepped forward cautiously. "Your family, they controlled everything. She was begging for help while they told the village she had run away with another man." Daniel staggered back like the ground had shifted beneath him. Kemi's voice cracked. "I lost my shop. My home. Even my name in this city. People looked at me like I was nothing." Tears blurred Daniel's vision as fragments of memories shattered in his mind. Missed calls, unanswered messages, excuses that never made sense. His mother's voice. Victor's concern. The lies now echoed differently. A final truth slammed into him like a storm. His own family had destroyed the woman he loved. Daniel turned slowly, rage and heartbreak colliding in his chest. Because now everything he believed about his return home was collapsing in real time. Will he expose his family publicly, or remain silent to protect their name? The wedding hall in Victoria Island glittered like a palace built for dreams that were never meant to last. White roses lined the aisle. Crystal chandeliers cast soft gold light over hundreds of guests seated in silence. Cameras waited. Music hovered in the air, ready to begin. Daniel stood at the entrance in a sharp black suit, but his eyes were distant. Beside him, Adora smiled politely, unaware of the storm building inside him. Mama Grace leaned toward him. "Daniel, it's time." He didn't move. Victor frowned from the front row. "Brother." Daniel stepped forward slowly. One step. Then another. Until he reached the center of the hall. The music stopped. Confusion rippled through the guests. "Daniel." Mama Grace called, her voice tightening. "What are you doing?" He turned toward the crowd. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. "This wedding will not continue." A wave of shock swept through the hall. "What?" Adora whispered. Daniel raised his phone. On the screen, bank records, transfer logs, messages, deleted photos recovered from months of investigation. "I trusted my family," he said, voice rising. "But they stole from the woman I loved. They lied. They destroyed her life." Gasps erupted. "Mama Grace stood abruptly." Daniel stopped this madness. But he didn't. He played a voice recording. Victor's voice filled the hall. "She's gone. Don't worry about Kemi anymore. She doesn't matter." A stunned silence followed. Whispers exploded across the guests. "This is shameful." "Is it true?" The wealthy businessman stood slowly, face hardening as he turned to Mama Grace. "So this is the family you brought us into?" Without another word, he took his daughter's hand. "Adora will not marry into deception." They walked out. The crowd began to scatter, murmuring, recording, judging. Mama Grace broke down. Victor tried to speak, but no one listened. Daniel stood in the wreckage of his own wedding, breathing heavily, eyes burning with rage and grief. But through it all, one thought remained, heavy, unbearable, unfinished. After everything she endured, can his fiancée ever trust him again? The weeks after the ruined wedding felt like a long silence breaking slowly into truth. Daniel did not return to London. He stayed in Lagos, refusing comfort, refusing excuses. Every morning he went to Balogun Market, searching for Kemi among the noise and dust until he finally found her again, sitting in the same place where everything had fallen apart. At first, she would not look at him. "You think showing up changes anything?" she asked coldly one afternoon. Daniel lowered his head. "No," he said. "But I have to try." He began small. Food first. Then shelter. Then medical care. He rented a modest room for her, far from the noise of the market. He paid back every debt she had been forced into, one by one, quietly, without expecting forgiveness. But Kemi remained distant. One evening, rain poured over Lagos, washing the streets in silver light. Daniel stood outside her small room, soaked, holding a box of sewing materials. "I found your old designs," he said softly. "I thought maybe you'd want them back." Kemi finally opened the door wider. Her eyes were tired, but no longer empty. "You don't get to fix what was broken," she whispered. Daniel nodded. "I know." A long silence stretched between them. Then slowly, she took the box. Months passed. Kemi began to sew again, not in fear, but in silence and healing. Daniel never rushed her. He only stayed close enough so she would not feel alone again. When she finally spoke his name without anger, he broke down quietly, like a man carrying too much for too long. "I'm sorry I wasn't there," he said. Kemi looked at him for a long time. "I don't need perfection," she replied. "Just truth." And slowly, something began to rebuild. Not the past they lost, but a new beginning shaped by honesty. A simple wedding followed. No luxury hall. No golden chandeliers. Just a small courtyard filled with neighbors, friends, and the few who had stood by them when everything else collapsed. Kemi walked down a narrow path in a cream dress, her steps steady this time. Daniel waited at the front, not as a man returning from success, but as someone who had learned the weight of failure. When they exchanged vows, there was no applause from wealth, only tears from those who understood survival. Love had returned, not as fantasy, but as something rebuilt from broken ground. True love is tested not during moments of success, but during seasons of hardship. Greed and deception may win temporarily, but truth eventually finds its voice, and justice arrives when least expected.